place where you do not know the language. Words do not interrupt your vision. Silence allows you to see differently. During my short time in Heidelberg, I took in the landscape, the wild flowers, the cobblestone roads, the old buildings bleeding into new construction. One noticed a sadness. Perhaps it was the feeling of a place that had experienced the devastation of war, or the effect of having a U.S. military base shut down and the struggle of figuring out what would happen next. I saw the whiteness of the place. A smattering of color here and there, a soul food restaurant that played Al Green and served only Ethiopian food, and heard the beauty and harshness of a language I could not understand. Whatever I was experiencing, even in that initial traumatic moment, I was not in the United States, and to my mind that was a good thing. I did not have to go on television and explain what happened at the train station. I did not have to explain it to James either. I wondered at the time if this was what James Baldwin initially felt when he lived abroad, an escape from the constant demand to deal with what was happening in the States and what was happening in him because of it. Paris became a refuge of sorts in his early days. Whatever Baldwin faced there, at least he didn't have to deal with the barrage of racist nonsense here. And in the silence that his lack of French afforded him, he could reimagine himself. It is exhausting to find oneself over and over again, navigating a world rife with deadly assumptions about you and those who look like you. To see and read about insult and harm, death and anguish, for no other reason than because you're black, or black and poor, or black and trans, or whatever. For me, the daily grind consumes. I cannot escape the news. I'm drowning in it, and in all of the nastiness of a country that seems or feels like it is going underwater. Heidelberg afforded some critical distance, a brief refuge from it all. A small apartment in a place where I did not know the language offered me an opportunity to be still, to quiet my head, and to think about my country and the moment we currently find ourselves in. I started this book outside of the United States. That seemed appropriate. It would give me a distinct vantage point to write about Donald Trump, race, and the current state of our politics. Plus, Baldwin insisted that it was outside of the United States that he came to understand the country more fully. My hope was to begin the writing in St. Thomas in a nice flat overlooking the Caribbean Sea. But Hurricane Maria took care of that dream. So I found myself in Europe, lecturing and teaching at a university where Hegel taught his phenomenology of spirit in the 19th century, and thinking about James Baldwin's America and what lessons it might offer our own. At the end of the second week in Heidelberg, I decided to catch a quick flight from Frankfurt to Nice. I wanted to see Baldwin's home in St. Paul-de-Vence, or what was left of it. I knew that his sprawling 10-acre property, the place with its welcome table that he finally called home for 17 years, was being destroyed to make way for luxury apartments. I found it a fitting image for his later life and a somewhat ironic fulfillment of his own prophetic witness: capital and luxury running roughshod over everything. Even his sanctuary failed to escape. I've never traveled within Europe before. They didn't give us papers to fill out. No one checked my passport. I simply walked off the plane that morning and into France. My taxi driver, Christophe, I imagined him as the white French counterpart of Black Christopher in Baldwin's novel Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone. A rather muscular white fellow who looked like he could be from South Jersey, drove toward my hotel. He seemed excited to practice his English. I mentioned the purpose of my visit. I'm going to St. Paul-de-Vence to see the remains of the house of a famous African-American writer. The remains. It was as if I were visiting a gravesite. Christophe interjected, No, you should visit the place immediately. Nice would be cut off from traffic later in the day, he told me. France was preparing for a national dance party that evening, and I found the idea of a national dance party odd. Plus, France's second game of the World Cup was scheduled at 4 p.m. He made an abrupt U-turn, and we headed toward Baldwin's home. When we arrived in St. Paul-de-Vence, Christophe walked with me down the Route de l'École toward Baldwin's home. I saw the tips of moving cranes. We were so close. Soon the beginnings of the new apartments came into view, concrete foundations with red wooden side rails for protection. Men were busily moving about. Below us was an absolutely stunning view of the countryside. I imagined Baldwin waking up, probably at midday, after a night of heavy drinking.